This is the podcast that we ask our guests from in front and behind the camera, how did they get their foot in the door? What was the key to unlocking their success? What's their story?
A casting director who's championed indigenous casting since she decided to pivot from acting to casting. We chat about the brilliant cast of Netflix's American Primeval, discovering new talent for Matthew McConaughey's latest movie, working with A24, and of course, her advice to actors. Our guest today is casting director Angelique Midthunder. My podcast is usually about how someone's career begins and, that sort of the first few steps and getting into casting. And I believe that, did you start as an actress? Is that a real thing? Because you never know when you look at these things up how true some of this is. But is that true?
Yes and no. Um, well, it's funny. First of all, I'll just say to that, the topic of like how people get started in the industry, especially like, like different, like casting is such a unique way. But my husband always says that there's a portal that opens and then it closes behind you, and each person's portal is unique. So like the way I got into casting is not the way anyone else is going to get into casting. But it was sort of, so as a yes and no, it was acting, basically, acting, working in the film industry, the fact that there is a film industry, none of this was anything that was on my radar at all when I started it. And I started very young in my early 20s. Basically, I was in Santa Fe house sitting. I'm not even from Santa Fe. And I had seen an ad in the paper. This is like forever ago, and there were newspapers and they would put ads in them. This is the 90s. And I see this ad in the paper for like, oh, seeking, 20 something female horse riding, long dark hair, whatever. And I was like, well, I thought it was like just a job like breezing horses at a racetrack, or I don't know, mucking stalls at a ranch or whatever. And I'm a horse lover. I've always been a horse lover. So I was like, the physical description is kind of, that's creepy, but look, I love horses. I'm going to go to this thing and hopefully I can get this job. Uh, and it turned out it was a casting call and the character had to ride a horse. So that's why the physical description, as any casting call would have. And I got the part. I think like one thing what I tell actors about this story is because I showed up, I had no expectations. I didn't even want the an acting job. I got there, they're like, memorize these lines and go in the other room, we're gonna film it. Um, well, I'm here now. Okay, sure, why not? But I had no attachment to like, oh, I really want this and I have to get the part and I have to, I wasn't overthinking the character, whatever. And the scene was like I was being accused of stealing something from someone and I hadn't done it. So I was just like, oh, that's interesting. How would I act if that, how would I behave if someone was accusing me of stealing something and I hadn't done it? And so I didn't overthink it. I didn't put anything more into it than that. Um, so I think that's like a big lesson as far as like for actors, is like just don't overthink it, just go with your gut. How would you handle this in this situation or as this character in that situation? So I got the part. Then I was like, "Oh my God, it's amazing. You got an acting part. It's your first time. You have to get an agent now. You have to go to auditions." And um so I did that, and I started going to auditions. I hated it. I was like, "Wow, this is stressful." It's not, I don't like it. Now that I'm invested, I don't want to do it. But I had made friends with a casting director. I'd gone to enough auditions for her. She liked me. She thought I was talented, I guess. She kept calling me in. But I wasn't, anyway, she asked me if I wanted a regular job, and she was looking for an assistant for a series that she had coming up, and I had only been in the acting game for like 4 months. And I was like, steady work? Yes, please. I'm just house sitting in Santa Fe. What am I doing? So yeah, I ended up working as her casting assistant, and that I loved. That was fun. That's like creative, and you work with, not that acting isn't, but like for me, working with the casting team, breaking down scripts, thinking of like, character descriptions, actors that are going to fit in these roles, watching people come in, again, the olden days before Zoom, when people came into the room and would perform it, you're reading the scenes with them. It's like, wow, like seeing it come off the page and become something real, like something thought of a story, they wrote it down, and now we're seeing people acting it out and bringing it to life. That was exciting to me. And now, as my career continues, working with different directors, whether they're seasoned filmmakers like Pete Berg, or whether I work with a lot of like independent films,
Mm,
first time directors or directors that are earlier in their careers. I love working with people like that are so passionate
mm.
about what they're doing, and they get excited about bringing it to life, and I get excited about, helping them, supporting them in their journey, bringing it to life. So that's kind of where my journey has taken me.
Wow. So it really was, a moment where you were like, hang on a minute, I'm doing this, but over there looks a bit more interesting. It looks a bit more what I want to be doing. That's crazy.
Yeah, yeah.
It is, as you say, you're much more involved because with acting it is just you look at the script, you break it down, what is this character's, and you break down that character, and that's kind of everything else is not really your business, whereas casting you get to sort of dip into every little element of it. It must be really, I've always thought it sounds really fun, um and to be able to picture the person you want in the role, and have them come in, and maybe when you have people come in the room, I guess, is that maybe not so often now. Maybe it's more tapes. I don't know. Is there something do you prefer the system of having someone come in the room, the preamble, let's talk through, and then do the actual audition, or is it more interesting to have tapes because you get to, I guess, see a lot more people?
It's both. I mean, look, there's nothing that compares to the chemistry of being in the room and doing, getting to know the actors, or at least just having that kind of moment with them where it's like they're performing it and there is a chemistry that, in the room, you can feel it like, oh, it's coming to life. It's coming to life. Let's do one more take. And, what if, and you can play off each other, right? And you're like, what if you do it like this? Yes, I was thinking that too. And then, the actor does it and this, right? You feel it and you're like, that felt like it. Yes, let's go again. Let's take that and let's go again, push it further or whatever. So there's definitely a chemistry that, and an energy in the room that's just so much fun to play with. But, and yes, we're not in the room as often as we used to be. It is kind of, since COVID, it's kind of gone to self-tape world over here. It's a lot of self-tapes. But the good news about the self-tapes is that, yeah, you can see more people, and
Mm,
you can it just creates more opportunity for more people, and it's more opportunity for the filmmakers to see more people. So more
yeah.
actors are getting a chance to participate and book roles in films that maybe they wouldn't otherwise. I mean, it used to be in the old days, man, if you were on vacation, you miss an audition, you blew it. There's no chance of you doing it. Now it's like, oh, you're, visiting your mom or whatever. It's like, fine, just send a tape. Everybody's sending tapes anyway.
Mm,
And for the casting director, to be honest, yeah, we can watch a lot more tapes. If it's a 5-minute performance, it's not a 10-minute ordeal because somebody comes in the room. I'm going to give them 10 minutes. They take off their jacket, turn their phone off, say hello, stand on their mark, fix their hair, whatever. It takes 10 minutes to get a 5-minute audition in the room. But a 5-minute audition on tape is 5 minutes, and so I can get through twice as much material.
mm,
Um, so it does create a lot more opportunity. I guess on the flip side of that, for the actor, it's like, well, there's a little bit more competition than there used to be. Um, but I do think too that we're also seeing more content being created. So I just do think that there's more and more opportunity out there.
mm. Do you have do you have advice for, if someone was to get a tape to do for you? Is there anything you would, I mean, I know it's obviously specific to that role or whatever the project is, but um, any sort of tips or tricks for self-taping for you?
I mean, the tape's got to be clear. like a lot more clear than my Zoom window. I feel like I'm looking at myself going, am I blurry?
That-
Um,
Yeah.
seriously, what? Um, but I'm gonna, I hope you use all of these outtakes.
Do I look
Um,
clear? I don't know.
you look clear to me. Do I look clear to you?
Sort of.
Blurry, right? Like a little bit blurry?
I think to be honest, I think Zoom is it's yeah, it could be better, to be fair.
Oh well, here we are. Um,
Sorry, I
uh,
distracted you from your answer there.
my answer. The tape does need to be clear. I like what I'm looking for is I want to be able to see your eyes at the very least. I mean, I do like when people use like, a camera or a phone. Phones are fine. Phones are so good nowadays, but it does need to be like it can't be vertical. It can't be far away. I need to be able to see you. I need to be able to hear you. I know that's very elementary, but believe me, I see a lot of tapes, and sometimes I'm like, ah, gosh, that performance was amazing. I really want to put that tape forward, but the production quality of the tape, I don't know that the director's really going to give it his full attention. And like I said, you can do this with your phone.
Mm,
You just gotta, invest in a ring light maybe and a phone stand or whatever. But you've just gotta get it. You just gotta make sure you have your good setup, you know?
mm. Yeah, I mean, I can't imagine. You must see all kinds of things, all kinds of tapes come through, and because it does blow my mind sometimes when you get the breakdown. It's like, well, make sure that you've got it landscape, make sure, and it kind of really breaks it down. You're like, who doesn't do that? But then there must be people that do that because otherwise, why would you put it in the email? Um,
Every, every time.
yeah, every time, I'm sure. I guess there's always new actors coming onto the scene as well, so they're learning as they go. So I'm sure you get a lot of people that are, maybe it's their first tape, but we all kind of,
For older actors too. Like I
oh,
feel for
really?
older actors that have been in the game and are like, they're just used to showing up and performing. They don't want to deal with the technical stuff, you know. But we do try to, we want to help people to succeed as much as possible. So as much as we can do, even if we hop on a Zoom with somebody and I'm like, you just show up for the Zoom, I'll record, again, it's not the best quality, but ultimately, as long as we can see and feel your performance, that's what we're looking for.
Looking at your credits, you've done so many different projects and so many different things. Very kind of, as you say, like bigger projects, more independent film and TV, and a mixture of everything. Is there something that you particularly prefer? I mean, you did say that with the independence, that can be a really like fulfilling thing to do a smaller, lower budget thing. But is there a particular kind of project that you really kind of enjoy? Like maybe a project you've done that you can kind of throw back to and be like, that was an incredible experience.
I mean, I love my independent filmmakers and I love to see them succeed and like go through the struggle. And so now they have money and they're able to kind of do everything that they wanted to do without a budget. So, I mean, along those lines, Sterling Harjo is probably my favorite filmmaker that I've worked with consistently over the years. I mean, he is a true indie filmmaker at heart. He does the creator of Reservation Dogs, along with Taika Waititi, also an independent filmmaker that's done well for himself. And it's like I feel like these are the kind of filmmakers that are just the perfect example. Like, here's somebody who is extremely talented. They just need someone to see their work and create an opportunity for them to get their work out there. So Sterling had been doing independent films for years and years and had kind of a cult fan following. But then he got Reservation Dogs along with Taika Waititi with FX, and then the world got to see kind of what all the fuss was about.
Mm.
And so working, that kind of thing where I'm working with somebody like that who's just like got this, genius mind that's like, this is interesting, this is funny, this is dark, this is whatever, and we pull it all together. And some people get it and some people don't. But then when you're able to, put it a mainstream spotlight on it, and then people go, wow, that's genius.
Mm.
That's really cool. And now we're working for him on another a new series that he's producing with Ethan Hawke.
Cool.
Ethan Hawke is starring in it. They're both producing it, also for effects. And that's really exciting too, because for Sterling, he's indigenous, so the majority of his content has been indigenous centered. This
Mm.
one's not. He's from Tulsa. This is based in Tulsa. It's kind of a Tulsa story. Tulsa is a city in Oklahoma for you in the
Yeah.
UK. But anyway, so it's just kind of a hometown story. I don't want to give too much of it away because it is a complex and interesting story. But it is also cool to see someone like that who is talented, so far talented outside of what people might just see him as an indigenous person. He's an indigenous filmmaker. He's a talented filmmaker. So for people to see that and for him to be able to kind of get out of like the box that people might have originally thought of him in is just so rewarding.
Yeah, that I saw that one. Is it the sensitive kind? I saw it on
Yes.
IMDb. Yeah, I straight away it interested me. It sounds really cool, and obviously I'm just a big fan of Ethan Hawke as well. And now that you've talked about the people behind it, I'm interested to see what that's about. It sounds interesting. Yeah, I mean you've got a lot of really interesting projects just on the cusp of either coming out or in the future, near future. Um, one of the ones that I wanted to ask you about was Americana. Am I saying that right? Is that how you say it? I'm dyslexic, so
That is right. I feel like we might have to cut this out, but I don't know what
okay.
happened to that movie.
Yeah, so it says 2023 on there, but then I saw that it's meant to be coming out this year. But it's got such an incredible cast, and it looks
I
really good. I saw a clip.
Yeah, I think that yes, it does look really good. The cast is incredible, and I don't know what's happening with distribution. So,
But I bet you by the time this comes out, there'll be something. It'll be like, oh, it's coming out this time, and then we'll have to re-record a little bit and be like, it's coming out here.
we'll
But
yes, we'll just put on our same shirts and we'll meet up and we'll be like, and then
yeah,
we'll just act like we know what we're talking about. Um,
yeah, I want to see that film. It looks great.
I do too. I do too. I think it premiered I want to say that it premiered maybe at South by Southwest.
Mm.
I don't know. We should research this. But now like then when it didn't like hit theaters, I was like, I wish I would have gone to the premiere.
Yeah. Oh, so you've not have you not seen the finished film yet?
And it
Um,
looks good. And
yeah.
filmmaker Tony Toast, he was really great to work with. The whole team was really fun to work with, and
Mm.
putting together that cast was similar in, putting together the A24 cast. We had great producers, we had a great team, we had a great script and a great first time director that people wanted to be a part of it. So,
Yeah, yeah,
uh,
yeah. And it
yeah.
had it. I mean, it's been reviewed, so it's got really good reviews. So it must be. I don't know. They must be looking for a date. I don't know, but it did say on there. It didn't say when, but it did say 2025. So maybe someone knows. I don't know. We'll find out. We'll find out.
But that cast I was extremely excited about as well. Yeah, so I'm excited to see, and hopefully that does, see the light of day this year because I think people are going to be very excited about it.
It looks really interesting, and Sydney Sweeney looks like she's playing quite a different character in it. So that, and she's a huge star now. Yeah, very interesting. But the other one was Opus, which just A24 don't miss. And every time I see a trailer for any of those films, I'm like, yes, because they're always different and individual, and like they feel edgy and new. There's always like they're always really pushing the boundaries. Um, this film looks mental. I don't know what I don't know what you could say about it, but I watched the trailer and I was like, I don't know what this is about, but it looks great. It feels like they're holding a lot back from the trailer, and that's another thing. They don't give away too much in the trailers for A24 movies. Um, yeah, putting a cast together for that one, what was the process like on that? And it just looked like it's a very diverse, interesting cast.
Yeah, it's so fun that you say that about A24 because I always think, well, A24, I mean, I love it. I told you I love my indie films, my indie
Yeah.
filmmakers. This was a first time director, which, I love my first time directors, but I always think like, man, A24, I love it. It's not everyone's cup of tea. But then everybody is like, everybody wants to work on the A24. Like it is everyone's cup of tea, I guess. Because yeah, I mean, I want to say that the casting process, when the project came to me, um, already Io and John Malkovich were both already attached. So I mean, you have A24, you've got Io, you've got Malkovich. The movie cast itself for like
Yeah.
this producing team, the director is just, he's like smart, he's just is this like, he's just like this, he's so interesting, he's so charismatic, he's got these great ideas. You talk to him for 2 minutes, you're like, oh, this guy is where it's at. So it's like, we just, you know there were so many, we were getting pitches from the agencies, lists of actors who would want to work on a project like this. So we're it's just, it was the typical casting process in that we were working with the agencies, creating lists, talking with the all of the producers, the filmmakers, working with the director, but it's just that it came together. It was like being a kid in a candy shop, as far as like casting goes, because it's like nobody was like, oh, you're doing what? No, thank you. You know what I mean? People were like, you're doing what? Yes, let's talk, you know?
Mm.
So it was just really fun. And Mark Anthony, the director, um, just such a cool guy, such great ideas. A fun fact, that movie shot in New Mexico as well, and we did do some indigenous casting on it. Originally there was nothing scripted with that had anything to do with indigeneity, but because they ended up using New Mexico as a location, Mark Anthony said, I want to incorporate the people of this land into this crazy story. And so, things like that, they just kind of fall together. And I think when you're working with people who are kind of like open-minded and like like free thinkers and like creative thinkers, that just kind of enhances a project so much.
Every time I see a trailer like that, I'm just like, yes, something different that isn't a sequel or a prequel or you know, um, literally some of my favorite films of the last couple of years have been A24, and I haven't seen one that hasn't hit for me. So I'm very much looking forward to that. But in terms of we mentioned like when we were emailing and stuff that there are a few projects coming up. Is there anything I haven't mentioned that you would like to talk about? Anything that's on the horizon that you're excited for, and that you're kind of, on the cusp of doing that you
Um,
can talk about, obviously.
yeah, that is a tough one, right? I mean, I feel like we have pretty much touched on just about everything. There's a show that's coming out on Netflix called Ransom Canyon that's very sweet. That's kind of a romantic, like a modern day romantic Western, based on a book series that I worked on. Resball is a feature that I cast for Netflix
Mm,
that had an entirely indigenous cast, with some of the Sterling Harjo from Reservation Dogs was one of the writers and producers of Resball, is about an indigenous high school basketball team, kind of based on the factual events and some actual like basketball teams and some of the things that they have been through, out of the Navajo Nation. So that was really cool. The basketball team was 10, was the kind of the main, central cast of the story was this basketball team. And it was all indigenous high school age basketball players that were the leads of this movie. And they were all discoveries. None of them were like, it wasn't like, oh, release a breakdown, and the agents submit and we look at tapes. It was like going out into the indigenous communities across America, across Canada,
mm.
finding basketball players, auditioning them, and assembling this cast. So that's something that I'm very proud of, and that's on Netflix now.
Oh, cool. So that's out. That's out. We can use that
That's
bit. I'll
that
check that
one.
one out. I'll check that one out. Um,
Yes.
there's also a few other projects that you obviously are part of the casting. I think, forgive me if I'm wrong because IMDb can lie to you, but in terms, I think it's the indigenous, possibly smaller roles in other films, but there's one that's coming out and got Matthew McConaughey and Kurt Russell. Um,
This is exciting too. Yes.
yeah.
Rivals of Amziah King.
I'm
Um,
glad you said it because I was going to mispronounce that for sure.
I probably mispronounced it as well. But yeah, that's actually very exciting. We worked on that actually for quite a while doing I did a massive search for the Indigenous lead. So the lead in that is a young Indigenous girl. Um, I don't want to give away too much of the story.
It sounds
But I
amazing though. Yeah.
And again, this is a discovery, if you will. This is a somebody who I had been kind of again keeping my eye on as she was, aging into the possibilities of actually casting her. And this is her first thing. And to be the co-lead with Matthew McConaughey, and I'm talking this is a lead role. When you see the movie, you're going to be like, wow, this girl's never done this before. But
Mm,
when I'm casting, it's especially when I'm looking for young people or discoveries, we're just looking for people that have this kind of quality that
mm,
match the character that we're casting. So
mm,
that was actually a process that took almost a year to find her.
mm.
And it was well worth it. She's incredible, and I'm excited for the world to see this movie, but also to see Angelina Looking Glass, who played that role, because she's a gem.
Mm. Is that can that be nerve-wracking? I presume like if you're trying to you're finding an unknown or someone that hasn't done it before, no matter how amazing they are in the room, like or on tape, is there a fear that, because they've not done it before, is there like a process where they get to sort of, I don't know, rehearse or what is the process of casting someone technically off the street, I guess?
It is scary for me. I feel like it's my responsibility that if this person doesn't do well, that, uh, I feel bad. Like it was my job to find a person that was going to do well. And especially when you're talking about carrying a lead in a feature, millions of dollars that are being invested in this project, you have to, that this person's going to not only perform, but they're going to be able to deal with the grueling task of carrying the lead role in a film, which is not just performance, it's grit, right? It's moxie. It's like you have to have this. So, yes, I will tell you for this particular film, Matthew McConaughey is the most generous actor that I have ever worked with. We knew how important it was that we find the right person. And when you're talking about a population that hasn't had as many opportunities historically and until recently those opportunities are growing, but it's still not like they've always been there. So it's not like we could dip into the pool of indigenous child actors that are on the Disney Channel and be like, oh, one of them would probably be good, because you're not it's not out, it's not happening. So we do have to make discoveries as opposed to like dipping into the pools of talent that already exist. But when I say that Matthew McConaughey is the most generous actor that I've worked with, the director was like, man, this is so important. Would you be cool with like doing chemistry reads with our top choices? And he was like, sure, no problem. And he showed up and he was doing these scenes over and over again with different young actresses.
Mm.
Um, and these are also we're also talking on the flip side. We got young actresses. We're putting them in a room with Matthew McConaughey, and we need them to not be starstruck.
Yeah,
You know,
pressure's on.
yeah, yeah. But it's just you're finding that chemistry. You're finding like people who can like settle into the role, be comfortable in the room, and he is like the most down to earth. He's exactly the guy you want him to be. He's just so great, so kind, and really works so well with these young actresses. But so that was such a big part of it that when we saw them working together,
Mm.
we were like, yeah, she can do it. this is gonna work.
Now for a quick break. We'll be back to the episode shortly. If you enjoyed this episode and want to support us, get early access and exclusive content and episodes, click to join our YouTube channel and become a member now.
Please leave us a positive rating. Add us on Instagram, Twitter, TikTok at Lifeinfilmpod. Essentially, please like and subscribe everything. It makes a huge difference. Thank you.
This podcast is sponsored by Betterhelp. Do you work in the film industry? Are you freelance? Or perhaps you have a 9 to 5? No matter what you do, mental health affects us all. I struggled early on in my career with the uncertainty of if and when I would ever work again, struggling to pay my bills or simply with anxiety. Don't know about you, but being an actor, it's very important for me to maintain structure in the downtimes, and I found not only exercise, but talking to someone for me was a game changer. And so Life in Film has partnered with Betterhelp to provide you with access to the largest online therapy service in the world. And it can all be done from the comfort of your own home, from a phone, tablet or laptop. No commute, cutting down travel costs, and most importantly, it's affordable. With over 1,000 therapists in the UK, BetterHelp can provide access to mental health professionals with a wide variety of expertise in mental health. If you need someone to talk to and you're thinking of giving therapy a go, BetterHelp is a great option. And being a listener of the podcast, you get 10% off. That's 10% off your first month at betterhelp.com/lifeinfilm. That's betterhelp.com/lifeinfilm.
And back to the show. American Primeval, which I thoroughly enjoyed. I've got my mum on it now. She's watching it as well. It might be a bit too brutal for her, but she's been enjoying it so far. What a brilliant show! An amazing project that is. How did that come about for you?
Well, thank you so much. I'm also a fan of the show. I have my story with I feel like everyone has a story with it and it's pretty similar, but I mean my story was that I just started watching it
Hmm.
once it came out and I was just gonna watch it like one or two episodes for, a couple weekends. I ended up watching the whole thing in one day and I just
Oh
talked to a
wow!
producer who is a friend of mine who was like, "Did you work on American Primeval?" Stayed up watching the whole thing. He was like, "I stayed up all night. I couldn't stop." Um, but anyway, so I'm glad that you enjoyed it. Thank you.
Oh, it's
Um,
such a great show. Such a great show. I wanted
yeah,
to, 'cause you mentioned in your email as well, Peter Berg, who, funnily enough, until this project, I kind of just thought of him as an actor, which I now realize is stupid because he's done so many great films, and TV series. But his face is so familiar for me, and I think it's from things like Copland, things like earlier on in his career. That's what I kind of imagine. So when I realized it was before you emailed me actually, and then you mentioning him, I was like, yes, it's brilliant. I was like, I couldn't, it blew my mind that he'd done so many great projects as a director, which I guess is primarily what he does really, because looking at the credits, he's got more directing credits, but um I mean the directing in the show is incredible and it's just so, I mentioned it before, but the brutality of the show, the way it's shot, the way it looks, and the performances, everything else. It's so real and so gritty, and all the actors look filthy, which can sometimes be unusual in like high budget Netflix series. They look genuinely from that time. They've all their teeth and the skin and everything else. There's so many great names in this show that I didn't even realize it was them until a
yeah.
couple of episodes in. I'm like, oh, hang on a minute. Like Shea Whigham's got a big old beard, and like, well, a lot of them have got beards. But the cast is fantastic. How when it comes to putting something like this together, and I know you work with,
Rachel Tenner.
how do you go about putting a cast together for a show? There's a lot of actors in this that are high profile, big names, but in the show you don't even realize it's them. They look so different.
Well, that was all a part of the concept for the show. I mean, Rachel had reached out to me, Netflix had reached out to me about the project, and Rachel works with Peter Berg
Mm.
quite often, in casting for him and his projects, and so they have a rapport. I kind of specialize in indigenous casting. I have a couple of I mean, I have a couple of jobs. One of them is I specialize in indigenous casting. I also do location casting in New Mexico, and this project happened to be coming to New Mexico and happened to um, have a large indigenous cast, including two of the series leads. So, both Netflix and Rachel had reached out to me and asked if I'd be interested in this project, and I was like, Peter Berg, say no more. Yes. But so I just really, I got to collaborate with them. I follow Rachel's lead. She works with Peter all the time.
Mm.
And from day one, Pete was like, this is not a Western. This is a story that's told in the Old West, but it's gritty, it's brutal, it's primeval. And he's like, this is the key word for this show. Everything about the show, the cast, the hair, makeup, sets, location, the story is all very, it's primeval. It's about just survival. He's like, it's not even about, you hear stories about, oh, people moving out west to get a better life. He's like, at this point, these people have moved into the west and they're just trying to survive. And we need the people watching the show, we need them to feel that. And we need actors that, are going to be able to portray that and disappear into the roles. And I think the conditions really helped. I think, honestly, people were dirty. I went to set, it was muddy, it was cold, it was like had been snowing and it melted and it was like muck. And I mean the dirt was real. One of the actors broke a bone on the show and just kept
Mm.
just working, with a broken bone. As you can see from the show, it's like this is a broken bones show. Um, but it's so, yeah, I mean, it was just a huge collaboration from all departments. And then as far as casting, just Rachel, Pete, and I just digging in to find people that were going to make it feel real. So my focus on the show was all of the indigenous cast.
Mm-mm. Well, I mean, it's a vast cast as well. It's a big show, and doing my homework for this, I couldn't believe the amount of just the credits and the people involved in the show. It's huge, it's gigantic. It must be when you get a project like this and you think, right, okay, so we've got to cast all the indigenous people in this. Like that must feel like quite a big undertaking. We didn't see it because I'm not going to use that bit, but you had a big old chart on your wall with all the different timings, all the different things. You must have to organize yourself very well to be able to cast something like this. And I presume you're probably casting multiple things at multiple times as well. How do you go about organizing something so vast and complicated?
Yeah, and I don't know if you know how much you know about actual production, but in production, some shows they do block shooting where they shoot all of the episodes at once or multiple episodes at once. So it's kind of so it's location specific or season specific, especially a show like this that shot over seasons.
Mm.
So it's like highly organized. I mean, you have to be highly organized on front kind of in every department and on every aspect. But yeah, I mean, what is the question? How do I keep it
Yeah,
organized?
how do you keep something so, vastly huge
Yeah.
like this project? How do you keep that organized and, make sure that you're kind of I don't know. It seems like such a huge thing. You must have to really break it down, and I guess that's how you do it with the blocks and the sections of filming and things like that. Is it kind of like a block at a time? You go, right, we've done that bit, and then move on to the next bit.
Time it sometimes depends on the show. Like a usual, like kind of a more typical television series, often yes. American Primeval was a little different because that was mostly the same people and their journey throughout. I also have a location casting partner that did uh the majority of the casting in New Mexico, and so she was kind of more organized in that way, like by the calendar, like, okay, let's look at what's coming up and make sure
Mm.
that, everything is solid there. But as far as like the lead casting, that's something that Rachel and I started on months out. And because who that they're going to be playing throughout, and how important those characters are, and to find the right people. So we start months in advance and kind of just thinking about who would be interesting, and finding out who is interested in doing something like that. It's not for everybody. It's not, it's that was not an an easy show to do. But yeah, everybody did kind of want to do it. I mean, everybody was like, yeah, I want to work with Peter Berg and I want to get my hands dirty. Um, but yeah, I'm really proud of the cast. The two indigenous leads, Red Feather and Two Moons, were both upcoming actors. Two Moons was very young. She had just turned 18 during pre-production. I've been keeping an eye on her um, for years as she's, because you kind of you want them to be 18 to be able to shoot the long hours and everything. So that was a stroke of luck that the timing worked out with her birthday
Ah,
because
perfect.
she's just fantastic, and she had both like the grit but also the innocence that character really needed to have. So I was very excited about that. And Derek Kinky, who played Red Feather, he is actually Shoshone, which is also something that we were looking for, was somebody who could bring that authenticity to the role with the language, with the heritage, and additionally, he so embodied the character. It was just like lightning striking.
They're both, yeah, both absolutely brilliant. I was going to say, because there's a lot of bits where they are speaking another language, and I was thinking that must be impossible unless you have the background to be able to do that, because I can't imagine people would learn that for a part. You wouldn't have enough time, but no, that's
But
interesting.
they do though. It's so hard. But they have cultural consultants, they have a language consultant,
Mm.
and they will come and they will translate the script. They'll do voice recordings, and then they'll work independently with each of the actors and teaching them the language and what, as an actor too, you have to know what you're saying, you have to know what it means so that you can emote properly, as you're speaking a language that's foreign to you. So they had to learn it.
Wow. I'm an actor myself and I'm dyslexic, so you describing that is like that would be an amazing challenge, but it would be something where I'd be like, wow, I've really got to, that's a lot of work to get that right. It's very impressive for any actor to be able to pull that off. But in terms of you mentioned before that, the show, the going in there, it was like this show's going to be primeval, it's going to be brutal, it's going to be all these things. It is one of those shows when you're watching it, you think any minute now one of the main characters can just die. Like there's no holding back on that end of it. And I don't want to give anything away for anyone that hasn't seen the show, but I was as I got halfway through it, I was like, I'm gonna look this up, see if they've commissioned a second season. I don't want to give away that's not gonna happen because, well, I don't want to give it away for the audience, but it's one of those shows you just don't know who's gonna come and go, and it makes the whole thing very tense. You're just like, oh my God, who's gonna make it through? Um, but I want to say there was one of the actors that really stood out to me, and it just because I've seen him in other things like Sons of Anarchy, and he's usually kind of this hard, scary sort of. Well, he is pretty scary in this, but he's not. He's a very different character normally. But it was Kim Coates, who plays the kind of the religious figure. He was absolutely brilliant in the show, like so different that again, I it took me a second to realize it was him.
Yeah, definitely another one that just disappears right into his role, which as an actor is just kind of that's what you want to do, right? That's kind of I feel like that's the ultimate. To me, what I love is when I see an actor that I never recognize them until, like you're saying, halfway through the series or something, and you're like, wait a minute, because they're just doing such an amazing job. But I will tell you something about the show that I don't know if everybody knows this, but the events that take place in the show, this is all based on historical events that have actually happened. The massacre where the Mormons dressed as the indigenous people, and I mean, these are all historical events. So, um, yeah, if there were to be a season two, I feel like it would have to be anthology.
Have to be quite a
And
few different characters, or yeah, as you say, maybe a different timeline or something. But wow, that's really interesting. Actually, I almost want to watch it again, knowing that. Um, But yeah, no, a fantastic show, and I really, really enjoyed it. And it was something I was watching, and that's why I wanted to reach out to you because I was just like, this is amazing. I want to be able to sort of chat more in depth about the show. And there's so many other projects I want to talk about, but I have taken up too much of your time already. But thank you so much for, giving me this time to chat. It's been really nice getting to know you and just sort of, chatting about your movies and stuff. It's been really fun. Thank you.
Oh, you too. Thank you.
If you enjoyed this episode and want to support us, get early access and exclusive content and episodes, click to join our YouTube channel and become a member now. Thank you to Angelique. As always, thank you to our sponsor, BetterHelp.